Mashpia, our inspirational guide, Rav Menachem Mendel Futterfass, would have matzah sent to him by package from his family abroad. And when it got to the jail, most of the time, it would get there too late. And in fact, there was one time where the jailer held the matzahs and offered Rav Mendel Futterfass cookies, because she knew that he was hungry and he was exhausted and he was starving to death. And she presented those cookies in front of him. And of course, the body craved it. But Mendel was determined never to eat a drop of bread on Passover and refused, fainting all over the time during his work hours, but he refused to eat something that was not kosher for Passover. Water he could drink. Occasionally he had some sugar, but there was no bread that year. They had Rachmanis on him. They found some vegetables that he could eat raw later, but he was in extremely weakened condition. And finally it was discovered that the matzahs had actually been in the possession of the warden. The warden, who was a woman, withheld them purposely in order to torture him. And Rav Mendel, when he found out about that, issued a complaint which caused the warden's removal. Those matzahs he kept for a whole year. Why did he keep the matzahs for a whole year? Because he did not know if the matzahs that would come next year would also be kept away from him. And so Mendel Futterfass held matzahs in his coat that he would use for the next year. And when there was a chassid who was in the jail together with him, those matzahs which were not even enough to sustain him for Pesach would be divided among all the Hasidim so that they would have at least the minimal amount of matzah for Passover, for the Seders. Such was the determination and the devotion of men who were above any kind of pressure, any kind of intimidation. These were the real Lubavitcher Chassidim. Moshe VISHEDSKY was a Lubavitcher Chassid, arrested in 1948. He had just had his wife given birth to twins, and he was all shook up by the fact that he was arrested just at the time when his family needed him most. How was his wife to support 5 little children? The oldest son had been sent away on the echelons and the trains a year or 2 earlier. Shalom Ber VISHEDSKY was able to get across the border. He was a student in yeshiva, became one of the most popular teachers of Hadarat Torah, the Baal Tshuva yeshiva, and an inspiration to thousands of other Jews. Shalom Ber VISHEDSKY was malnourished during this time and never grew to his full height. His brothers towered over him because later on they were able to grow to live at a time when food was abundant. But this Shalom Ber ran away to learn in yeshiva and didn't care about the material conditions. But now Moshe VISHEDSKY was alone in jail, and 5 children were home, 2 twins born. How is his wife going to survive? Who's going to provide for his family? No one else could. There were no rich people in Russia, no rich Jews, contrary to popular opinion. How would they survive? And then how would he survive? And these questions gnawed at him, ate at him. One night at 3 a.m., Reb Moshe heard the sound of someone crying. Now, this is not unusual in a jail. Men cry all the time if they're in jail for their lovers, for their wives, for their mothers. But this was a different cry. He couldn't understand what it was, and he put his ear to the wall, and it sounded like someone was praying, someone was davening at 3 a.m. Who was this person davening? It was none other than the storied Chassid Rabbi Nachum Mendel Futefas. Mendel Futefas had bribed the guards to allow him to bring in his talis and his tefillin. The guard refused to let him have his Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, and he never forgave the guard for that. The only way for him to be able to daven was at a time when nobody else would see him. And that could only be at 3 a.m. every morning. Winter, summer, spring, or fall. Now you may ask, it's not the time for Shachris. The rules in a jail are different than the rules of people who are found in freedom. There you must do whatever you can to maintain your Yiddishkeit. The only way for him to put on his talis and tefillin. Tefillin you can put on, talis, questionable, certainly no bracha. But the only way for him to pray as a Jew was with his talis and tefillin, concentration. And he would pray the words. He prepared himself beforehand, and then he would put the talis and tefillin on, and for an hour every day he davened from the depths of his heart, and he cried, and his prayers were filled with those tears, not tears of fear, tears of pain, of suffering, tears of longing for holiness, tears of wanting to be near his Rebbe and hearing the words of Chassidus, tears for the devotion of a Chassid who wanted to care for other people, tears of one seeking God and seeking God's revelation. Reb Moshe understood those tears and found out that his next door neighbor was none other than his dear friend Mendel Futefas. Mendel also found out that Moshe was next door to him. And so they made a sign. They would talk the next evening at 2 a.m. When the clock struck 2, two Hasidim, bearded Hasidim with big bushy beards, put their faces in the kanava, in the sewer line, where there was schmutz and vermin, in the cold and in the dark and the damp, speaking to each other, giving each other hope. Mendel said, Moshe. Moshe said, Mendel. And Mendel said, Moshe, are you besimcha? Are you happy? And Moshe said, are you crazy? Happy here in this bitter jail? And Mendel scolded him and said, Moshe, like this, they only have your body. If you're not happy, then they have your soul. You must be happy.